welcome to a big ol' book unhaul. There's stacks of books here that I've been putting off for a while. I always contemplate between doing book unhauls or not. I don't share every book that I unhaul here, but sometimes it's nice, and I know I like to watch unhauls because I like to see, oh, that book wasn't worth that person's time, it's probably not gonna be worth mine, or they didn't really like this book for that reason, so maybe I will like it or I won't. It feels like a negative video. For that reason, I always hesitate to put it out, but I think because there's so many books out there, I think it's good for you guys to hear which ones I think aren't worth my time, and then maybe won't be worth yours, or maybe there will be certain things that I'll say that you will think that sounds like a great book. As always, you are more than welcome to try to change my mind on these books. The ones I'm going to start with, I'm going to say right off the bat, I'm not convinced I should get rid of these, but I don't know when I'll read them, and I don't want to have them on my shelves forever, making me feel guilty. So I don't know, I'll share the books, and then maybe you guys can help me figure out what I should do with these. These are, it's a stack. It's the Zion Covenant and Zion Chronicles books. So it starts with the Vienna Prelude, which I do want to keep because I did enjoy that book. And because I enjoyed that book so much, I got really excited when I found these in the thrift store. I think that was the Zion Covenant. Yes, I don't know how many books are in each series or if I even own them all, but the first book was really good because I learned a lot about World War II, shortly before World War II started, things that were going on, and I really liked that. And so I got this series, and then I tried to reread book one because I read it before my booktube days, and then not everything is as solidified because I wasn't having to explain books and it's been longer. So I tried to reread it and I was just not in the mood, but also I'm not a big rereader, so it could be that as well. So do I continue both of these series or continue the Zion Covenant series and start the Zion Chronicles series? I don't know. Maybe. Here's what I'll do. I'll just do a poll. I'm gonna make a form with a poll. So in the description of this video, there will be a poll. You can click over and you can vote if I'll keep it or not. And I'm just gonna go with the most votes a week after this video has been live. And then that's what I'll do. So I may or may not be getting rid of these. I'm very torn, honestly. But there's a lot of books sitting on my shelf staring at me that I'm not gravitating to right now, so I'm not really sure what to do. Thanks for making that decision for me. Okay, so that's one stack out of the way. These next ones I'm gonna breeze through fairly quickly because I did try a chapter over on my Patreon beginning of August, I guess this was, with these books. And some of them I ended up keeping, so they're not on this stack. And these ones didn't grip me for different reasons. So we've got James L. Rubart's Soul's Gate. This is the only one of his that I'm unhauling. I ended up keeping two of his, and this one just felt I only read the first chapter of these, so it's really hard, but this one, the opening reminded me of Ted Decker's Circle series, which I know lots of people love. I kind of enjoyed back in the day, but it felt a little too supernatural, didn't really make a whole lot of sense. So there's that one. I have All That We Carried by Erin Bartels. This one is about two sisters that go on a hiking trip. From what I heard over on Patreon, this is another one that should I keep it, should I not? Maybe I'll add this one to the poll as well. I didn't like the beginning. The sisters have a rocky relationship, and I don't know, I just wasn't liking the atmosphere of the book, but I hear that it actually can be good. So yeah, I'll put this one on as a poll too. Also, side note, there are crickets outside my window. I'm hoping this microphone is not picking them up. It's driving me nuts. There used to be, I'm assuming there still is somewhere in Saskatchewan, a cricket line. So where I live, we never used to have crickets. I did not grow up having crickets, but I don't know, I guess global warming? I don't know what it is, something. The cricket line has been moving farther north, so now we have crickets, and I don't know how to deal because they're so annoying, and I just didn't grow up with that. So I'm sorry if you're hearing them. Just know that I'm also going crazy. The next one was The Girl Who Could Breathe Underwater by Erin Bartels again. This one, it had like the opening vibes of like a thriller story, but just so stereotypical that I just wasn't interested. So I definitely am getting rid of this one. And I have 2 books by Diane Chamberlain. I know some people really like her books, and I've got them from Little Free Libraries thinking maybe I would give them a try. And I tried the first chapter of this one. It's set in 1944, and the main character in the first chapter... Wait, now I'm totally forgetting what this first chapter was about. Oh, yeah. Okay, so this is the prologue that I read. She, like, goes against her husband's wishes and takes out a car that she's not supposed to be driving in 1944 here, and she ends up crashing it into the lake, and I think her sister-in-law dies, who's the person that convinced her to take the car out, and she escapes. And just like, I mean, the stolen marriage as well. I'm not for books that are like, have a lot of marital unrest in such a negative way, like lying, and I think there's some cheating and stuff, and it's just not for me. Then another one of her books is Breaking the Silence. This one has apparently a lot of things going on. So in the first chapter, our main character's father dies, and he tells her to look out for, he says a name, and he says she's supposed to look out for this woman. And then after that, I went and I read the back of the book, and there's like 12 other major things that happen in the story, and I'm just feeling like she's not going to be an author for me. So I decided to get rid of this one. Then we've got 2 Lynn Austen. This one is Hidden Places, and I don't remember one from the other. This one was about set in 1930. A woman's husband had just died, and I think she maybe receives... No, her father-in-law has died. Her husband had died a few years earlier, and now she has like inherited the family orchards, I think. I don't know. It feels like it's just not going to be my style. It's too historical fiction, like traditional historical fiction that was published years ago. That's how it felt from the first chapter. And then the last Lynn Austen, I didn't even finish the first chapter of this book. I got so bored. This was set 1861. We're in Bull Run, Virginia, and I was just bored out of my mind in the first chapter already, so that's never a good sign. Okay, so those were my tri-chapter ones. This one, I was disappointed that I didn't like. Shakespeare's Sonnets Retold. I started this in July maybe, and realized really quickly that it was not for me. So it's written so that Shakespeare's sonnets are on one side, and then a rewritten modern day sonnet is on the other side. And they're supposed to be kind of like, I thought they were translated more, but they're retold in a, from what I can tell, like I don't really understand Shakespeare, in a much more like vulgar way that I'm not really interested in. So that's too bad, because I was hoping this would make me excited to read some Shakespeare, and it didn't do that. This one is just The Great Gatsby because I found a better version. I still haven't read this book, don't know anything about it, but I found like the orange penguin edition, and I don't like this cover, so I don't need 2 copies of this book. Then we have Honorbound. This one I got in a Little Free Library. It's I believe it's a Revel, so probably Christian fiction. I don't know what this is about, honestly. I didn't... Special Forces. I just, judging from the cover, I'm like, why did I even pick this out of a Little Free Library? It feels too stereotypical for me. This is totally judging a book by its cover. Then we have Running Scared by Lisa Jackson. I honestly don't even remember when or why I picked this one up. It doesn't look like it's a book outlet book. I wouldn't have paid money for it. I don't know how it ended up in my house. I have no idea, so I'm not interested. I gotta let my cat in now. Give him a couple minutes. He'll be meowing to be let out shortly. This is another Little Free Library one, I think. Alice Hoffman, The World That We Knew. I was going through my bookshelves, and I'm just like, I'm never gonna pick this book up. So I know nothing. I feel like it's not gonna be one that I'm gonna read, so trying to get my TBR shelf down to 100 unread books in like the next 9 months or so. I got some work to do. So a lot of these are just books that I realized, you know, I'm never gonna read them. But this one I actually did read. This is All the Greys on Green Street. I think I read this one in June or July, and it was a middle grade book that, I don't know. I wish I wouldn't have wasted my time reading it. It wasn't terrible, it just wasn't much of anything. Then we have Jennifer Donnelly's Deep Blue. I started reading this one. First of all, the font is all blue, which is strange. Doesn't happen very often. I started reading it. It's a mermaid story. I didn't get very far, just I was really not interested, so that one was a no. This one was a little harder because I did enjoy this first book, The Book Wanderers. And then I feel like this one might be book 3. I have book 2 somewhere too. And the cat's trying to scratch himself on the tripod. Okay, I think he's done now. Yes. Oh, you know what? Here's the other one. Okay, so this is 1 and 2, and then I think this one is 3. I'm just not going to continue the series, and no one in my family is interested, so I'm going to take these ones to a used bookstore because I think I should be able to get some money for these. Then I read A Castaway in Cornwall, I think also in June. It was okay. It just wasn't worth keeping on my shelf. Christian historical fiction. Average. This one I was kind of tempted just to keep for this terrible cover, Fisherman's Creek by Daphne du Maurier. I did not finish this book, but it is mostly all about an affair, so not interested. Terrible cover. Finding Junie Kim. This was supposed to be our August book club book for August, obviously. But then I just heard a lot of negative things about it, and that it's like super heavy and super dark and a lot of inaccuracies. So then I'm like, well, why would I want to read it if it's going to be all those things? I don't know why this one was on here. This is Life Everlasting. Oh, maybe because this is book 2 by Robert Whitlow, and I don't own book 1 in this series. And I'm trying to just let go of some books. If I ever want to read it again, I can get it from the library. I'm going to have to find book 1 first anyway, so got rid of that one. Tell Her No Lies. I heard quite a few things about this one. I did this one for a like a read. What did I do? I read the first sentence or the first paragraph and then was getting rid of books, and then this first bit actually intrigued me, but then judging from the comments that I got on that video, I'm not gonna like this one, so that one can go. I have a nonfiction on here, The Magic of Motherhood. This was one of the 12 nonfiction I wanted to read this year, and I started it, and it reminded, like, I think it's just for mothers in a earlier season of life than I am, so I'll probably put this in a little free library. And now this one you will find in like every single little free library you ever go to. Still Alice. I don't know if I'm ever gonna read this one though. I feel like I used to even own it in a different copy. Like it's just always in a little free library. And I think this is just gonna be a book that's either like both too emotional and too contemporary for me. I got House Rules. Another one I picked up from a little free library. I think because it was like, well, it doesn't look like there's anything better. I should have just left it. I got The Centurion's Wife a while ago, and I started reading this one. This is just about like the Easter story, except we are with Pontius Pilate's wife? Well, with 2 characters, I don't really know. But then I started reading it, and like the writing style was not my favorite, so I'll just stick to reading the Bible. This one has been on my shelf for a long time, 8 Perfect Murders. The truth is, I just want to read the books in here first because apparently it spoils all of these stories. And I have gotten a list of them before, and I know I have not read them all. So I'm just gonna get rid of this one for now. Maybe I'll get it from the library sometime after I finished the other ones. This is the problem with reading multiple genres, is if I just read mystery books, then I could go and read through these 8 mysteries really quickly. But I'm reading like so many other genres that it's gonna take me forever to get through all of these. Couple more books. This is the book of 3, The Chronicles of Pryden. I've heard really good things about the series, but honestly, neither of my kids have been interested in it, unless I could get the audiobook for my son. That might be an option. I'm not interested in it myself, and I know my daughter definitely isn't, so then why keep it? This is another one. I think I got this from Book Outlet. Penelope March is Melting. I don't know, it kind of seemed like a fun story, but I think it has terrible reviews on Goodreads, and I have not picked it up in the years that I've had it, so time for it to go. And the last one is actually an Anne M. Martin one, so this is like the Babysitter's Club lady, Everything for a Dog. And I just don't really like animal stories. I don't know if it would be better than I imagined that it would, but it's been in on my shelf for a long time. I haven't been interested in it at all, so I think that's a good indicator that it should probably leave my shelf. Okay, so that's a fairly large unhaul. I'm going to come back in a couple days and share a bit of a reading wrap up from the last couple of weeks with you. I have some really great books to share. Okay, welcome to the recent reads portion of the video. We're going to be talking about all of these books that I've read in the last couple of weeks. We're going to go in the order that I was holding them in, which is completely random compared to the order that I actually read them in. But the first one we're going to start with is one of my favorites. Actually, there was a lot of good ones on the stack, but this is the amazing Mrs. Pollifax. Once again, let's not judge this series by the covers of these old editions. I personally, you're gonna just mostly see my window there, but see that? That's a helicopter, and then we've got some kind of, I don't know, like you guys, I read the book and I kind of don't even understand these covers. I own the first book in the new edition, and I'm a fan of what they're doing with those ones, but I'm still collecting them in whatever edition I find them in. So, The Amazing Mrs. Pollifax. If you have not heard from when I've talked about this series in the past, this is only book 2 in the series, but Mrs. Pollifax decided at the age of 60, she was talking to her doctor, feeling mildly depressed, and he said, "Isn't there something that you've always wanted to do with your life?" And like, you know, any 60-year-old woman, she's like, "Yes, I want to be a spy for the CIA." And that's what happens. Well, she ends up being more like a courier kind of person, but either way. And as someone that has just kind of always been obsessed with that whole idea to begin with, and is not 60 yet, but I feel like maybe that will be the time when this can actually occur in my life. I have goals when it comes to being Mrs. Pollifax. So in this book, she has a quick decision to make whether or not she's going to go on this kind of like mission. Of course, she decides she is going to go. She goes to Turkey, and her goal there is to meet this lady. There has been an encrypted message that has been decoded. This lady is trying to escape Turkey, I think. She is going to a hotel every day at 8 o'clock, and the people that are rescuing her are supposed to like be holding a copy of Gone with the Wind. The first person that did that either disappeared or got murdered, or I don't even remember now. Something bad happened. So they decide to send in Mrs. Pollifax to do a second attempt at this. And, oh man, right from the beginning, I shared this one on my Patreon book club as my, like, one of my favorites of the month. We don't read a book together. We just hop on a Zoom call and either rant or rave about books that we enjoyed that month, and this is the one that I raved about. And I need to read the first part of the first paragraph because I feel like this describes Mrs. Pollifax, like the two different sides of her. So it says, Mrs. Pollifax had attended church that Sunday morning, and her hat, a garden of pale pink roses and green leaves, still sat on her head as she ate lunch in the sunny kitchen of her apartment. She had a tendency to be absent-minded lately about hats. In fact, ever since beginning karate lessons, she had become forgetful about a number of things. I love that, like, wearing a hat with flowers on it and the karate class, both of those being Mrs. Pollifax. Yes, this was a lot of fun. She meets some people along the way. There's this young person that gets kind of involved in her adventures, and there's one point where he's like, I thought you were respectable, and meanwhile they're dragging a dead body for some reason. So it's funny, it's a little out there, but for someone that just wants to dream about being a spy at one point in her life, this is a great series. I call it cozy espionage. The genre is probably not really in existence, but it is with this series. It's so much fun. Okay, now let's move on to a different genre here. Actually, I think like I read a variety of genres. Just looking at my stack here, they're all different. So I went with a classic, A Room of One's Own. I said it incorrectly on the book discussion live that I had last week. Why did I call it A Room with a View? I've never even read that book. A Room of One's Own by Virginia Woolf. Wow, okay. So where do I even start with this? Well, a positive, is that in this edition it's only 99 pages. It wasn't a terrible read. So this is, I think it was an essay that she had written, and I think it was actually a speech maybe that she delivered. It was all about women in fiction, and her idea is that in order to be able to write, one needs to have a room of one's own. You know, you need to have the time and the space and the financial means to be able to write, especially, I think this was written in 1929. So like, especially then, you know, now, honestly, if anyone wanted to write write a book, you could just use your phone and type it out. But like back then, you know, you would have had to buy paper and things that were just a lot less accessible to the average population. So there was some good points brought out in here. Especially I liked when she was talking about the Victorian era, and if women had any like creativity, there wasn't a space for them to be able to express this creativity. And I think about myself as someone that just always has a million projects on the go. Like, I think I would not have done well in the Victorian era, because if I was rich, then I would just have to like sit around going from like house to house having tea. That wouldn't have gone well with me. Or if I was poor, I would have had to work a lot, which isn't super great. But like, I would have had no time or the ability to express myself. So I appreciated that. But while I was reading this, I was like, oh, is this what they mean by stream of consciousness writing? I googled it, and yes, it is. And I do not like this in this format, the way she did it, at least, because it's very much, well, first of all, she's taking us on a walk, and then we're bouncing here, and then we're there, and like then we're back here. And I feel like that's how my brain works. I can understand the idea that this is stream of consciousness, but when I'm reading something, I want it to be a little bit more organized than how my brain is like pinballing. So there were some good things. I did like the beginning. She was setting a scene at the beginning, and it was really cool. But then a really random thing. First of all, I marked this down as like, oh, I like this word. Where was it? Hither and thither. So I liked when she used that phrase, and by page 12, she had already used it 3 times. So she took like a phrase that I thought sounded good and just killed it in the first 12 pages. So I liked a lot of what she said. I did not like how she executed it. So, but another positive is this is a classic book that I wanted to read before I die that is on my list that I can now check off. So there's that. And then I thought it was funny because then shortly after reading that book, I picked up this one, Listening for Lions, and there is a random mention of Virginia Woolf in here. We'll continue on. I'll tell you more about the book right away, but at some point this character meets Virginia Woolf and does not have nice things to say about her, really. It said, Virginia Woolf had wonderful hooded eyes and whispered to me unkind and funny things about all the other guests. So I guess maybe that was a positive, but in my mind, I don't want to be friends with someone that's gonna always just say unkind things about other people, because you know they're gonna say unkind things about you. So Listening for Lions, though, in a very, very different vein, is set, actually don't know what year it's set. Is it set in a certain year? 1919, yeah, okay. So our main character, her name is Rachel. She's 12 at the beginning of this novel. Her parents are missionaries in Kenya, and they die right at the beginning of this book from the Spanish flu. It comes to their village. Her parents are a doctor and a nurse. They get it, they die, and then something happens. Also, another person that died from this flu was like this rich English couple's daughter who had the same color of hair as Rachel, and they pretty much decide to take Rachel in and have her pose as their daughter. And it's a short book. It's just under 200 pages. If you're looking for a book for shorty September, I read this in an afternoon, a Sunday afternoon, so it can be read pretty quickly. So yeah, so they get her to impersonate their daughter, pretty much. They kind of blackmail her into it or threaten her into it. And I don't want to say a whole lot more because it is so short, but it gave me a mix of, like, if you've read any of the Christian Heroes Then and Now series, Ida Scudder, her parents were missionaries, or doctor missionaries in India. So that the first half of this book gave me like those vibes, even though we were in Africa, it kind of felt the same. And then the second half of the book gave me Secret Garden vibes because Rachel ends up going to England, and having her experience England for the first time after living in Africa, it felt a lot like, what's her name, Mary from The Secret Garden, moving from India to England and experiencing all that for the first time. So it was like a combination of both of those stories together, and I enjoyed it. I just hauled it and wanted to pick it up, so I enjoyed this one. Now we're going on to fantasy, Christian fantasy. We've got Oathbound by Victoria McCombs. So the last book in the series just came out, I think, a couple weeks ago. And this is about pirates. So it's part pirate story, but it's also got the fantasy elements, like there's some magical things. Just in regards to the fantasy stuff though, like one of my complaints is maybe that there wasn't quite enough of it. Every time we were reminded about like, oh, this magical medicine or this like whatever thing, I was like, oh yeah, this is also fantasy. It's not just a pirate story. I feel like especially at the beginning, I would have liked a little bit more of that fantastical stuff just to remind me like where we are, what kind of book we're reading. But this one is about names. M, she has been avoiding pirates for her pretty much her entire life. Her mother was one, and she has a negative view of them as a result. And something kind of happens, like she has been diagnosed with this rare but severe chronic illness that will kill her within a year if she doesn't get the nut of this plant from this tree that happens to be on this one island where her friend, a pirate, is going. So she agrees to go on this journey with him so that she can get the nut of this tree, and all sorts of things happen. Her friend is also like hiding some secrets as to why he wanted her on the trip and what the trip is really all about. And I enjoyed it. I think I gave this one 4 stars. I would like to continue the series at some point. Unfortunately, my library doesn't have any more from this series, so I might finish it via Scribd, because Scribd has a lot of Enclave Publishing's books on there, either on ebook or audiobook, so that's cool. If you guys have never had Scribd before, I have a link. I can leave it in the description. It's for 60 days free, I think. It's like Netflix for books, so you can like rent them out. Yeah, so it was a fun read. It probably won't go down as an all-time favorite, but I enjoyed my time reading it. 2 more left. This one I'm going to cruise over a bit because this is The Faithful Spy. So Tiffany and I had a live discussion on this last week, and we kind of got derailed as bookish people do when we started talking about all sorts of other books, but we did talk about this for a while. I really love what John Hendricks has done with this. So this is the story of Bonhoeffer, but it is so much more than just his story. It is a lot of information about how World War II started. And like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he saw a lot of red flags coming long before a lot of other people did. And I loved all the analysis. Like this one book, you have to look at the pictures. So it's kind of like, I call it like an illustrated novel. It's part graphic novel, part just like informative text. Depending which page you're on, it's such a good way to devour non-fiction information. I, as a homeschool mom, want him or somebody to do this for like every like nonfiction event possible, every biography, because kids will eat this up so much quicker than just reading a biography. First of all, I like this picture of Diedrich. And we did talk a little bit about it in the live, but he latched on to the idea that Hitler, he called himself the wolf. Not a pleasant thing. And he drew a lot of pictures in here depicting Hitler as a wolf. First of all, I really liked this one where you've got the wolf like shadow there, but there were some like really good ones, like this one. So yeah, definitely watch the live if you want more information on this book. But I loved it, want to see more like this in the future, both for myself and for my kids. It's going to be required reading for my daughter here like in the next year, and then my son in a couple years when he's a little older. And the last book that I just finished this morning is Agatha Christie's Marple. These are like 12 new Marple mysteries written by 12 different ladies. So this came out last year, and they took Agatha Christie's Miss Marple character and wrote 12 short stories kind of revolving around her. And it's really hard to like rate a short story collection. I've given it 4 stars on Goodreads, but I did something brilliant that I can't take credit for. I saw Kayla from Books and Lala do this in a video like a long time ago. She would go in with a sticky note and she would rate each story. And so I used these cute little cat sticky notes that I got from a pen pal, and I went in and rated each story individually. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I'm gonna forever and always do this with every short story that I read, because now I can go look back and reread favorites and skip ones I didn't enjoy so much. So the stories in here got everything from 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, and 5 stars from me. So that's where I landed on 4 stars on Goodreads. Some of them were definitely better than others. I personally enjoyed the first and last story the best. Ruth Ware was the only author that I had actually read from before, and her story was a solid 3 star, just like everything else I've read from Ruth Ware. She's very consistent. Yeah, so yeah, we just follow Miss Marple along. There were some really good first sentences. I think one of them I will have shared before this already, but it says, "It's not necessary to travel to a beautiful place to commit murder, of course, but sometimes it does help." I liked that one. There were some other great lines, some that just didn't feel as Miss Marple. Like some people just didn't get her vibe, I don't think, as well as others. One thing that I didn't like is there was one story where Miss Marple, she does go to a couple places like on the continent, but there's one where she went to the US, and I'm like, no, Miss Marple needs to be in Europe. Like she can't leave Europe. She is England. And I know she does travel a bit in the other books and short stories, but you can't have her going to America. I feel like that just feels wrong. Not that I have anything against America, but I just don't feel like that's Miss Marple's place. So those are all the books that I've read. If you guys have made it this far and rather enjoyed your time here, I would love it if you would hit the thumbs up button. It actually helps me out a lot on my channel. Then YouTube knows that this is not a terrible video. So I would appreciate it if you would do that. And if you guys do like my videos, judging from the poll that I put up a couple days ago, I think I will be moving to two videos a week here on this channel. I'm not sure if it'll start this week or in the next couple of weeks, but at some point here we will be moving back up to 2 videos a week. We'll do Monday and Thursday. So that will either be coming this Thursday or soonish. So thanks so much for being here and for all your support, you guys.